Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillah, we're continuing with our next class on the commentary on the Qutuf al-Falihin. Our Shaykh Sayyid Al-Allama Al-Habib Umar bin Muhammad bin Sani bin Hafiz, abridgment of the Riyadh al-Salihin of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, and we've reached hadith number 71. عن أبي ثرية سبرة بن معبد الجهني رضي الله تعالى عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم: علموا الصبي الصلاة ل7 سنين واضربوه عليها ابن 10 سنين. حديث حسن رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن. The Sahabi Abu Thurayya Sabra ibn Ma'bad al-Juhani radiyallahu ta'ala an, he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Allimus sabiyya, teach the child as-sabiyya as-salata, prayer, the salah, li7 sinin, when he reaches the age of 7, wadribuhu alayha ibn 10 sinin, and make darb or hit the child once he reaches the age of 10 for the prayer. Of course, the hadith requires much explanation. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in this narration he said, Allimu, teach the child salah. In other narrations he said, Muru as-sabiyya, command the child with salah. One of the interesting facts from this particular hadith is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam referred to a sabi, referred to a child of the age of 7 years of age as a sabi. And therefore our scholars have mentioned that a child that is born may be called a tifl, and then a ghulam, and then once he reaches this age of approximately 7, he would be referred to as a sabi. Naam. So he said, teach the child or command the child with prayer once he reaches the age of 7. Of course, scholars are in agreement that the prayer does not become compulsory upon the child, because the child is not mukallaf. Salah is only compulsory upon a Muslim, aqil, baligh, a person who is Muslim, a person who is sane, a person that has reached the age of puberty. These are the conditions that makes a person mukallaf, duty bound. Once you are duty bound, salah becomes compulsory upon you. A sabi is not a baligh, is not a pubescent, someone that has reached the age of puberty, and therefore salah is not wajib upon him, but it is wajib upon the parent to teach the child of 7 and to command the child of 7 to start making salah. We live in a sad reality that many parents or many guardians, they have a tendency to look at the child as a child, and we have a tendency to say he's still young or she's still young, let them enjoy themselves. And there's no problem for a young child to enjoy himself or herself, or even for an adult for that matter, but from that age the Prophet already wants you to impress something very serious upon them, and that is the prayer and the importance of prayer. Because the difference, he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, between the believer and the non-believer is salah. And the ruling among the ulama, all four madhaib, is a person who rejects salah is not a Muslim, is not a believer. Rejecting that salah is compulsory. And a person who acknowledges that salah is compulsory, yet he leaves or she leaves it out intentionally, in a pure Islamic country, that person's matter is presented to a qadi, and the qadi will pass judgment that person should be killed. Of course, some of the madhaib says that the person should first be given an opportunity to make tawbah and to start praying. But if that person refuses to do so, the person should be killed. And therefore, from the tender age of 7 already, the Prophet said, engrave salah within their minds and their hearts from that age already, and that's compulsory upon a parent. A mother or a father that fails, or even grandparents for that matter, that fails to implement and teach and command and instruct the young children from the age of 7 to make salah, are sinful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa tabaraka wa ta'ala. Naam. Added to the salah, teaching them salah, scholars added a number of other things that is considered to be essentials of their deen. Naam. Knowledge that the general populace is aware of in terms of what it means to be Muslim. Such knowledge must also be shared with the child. So from what the child must also be taught at this age, from the age of 7 already, is knowing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his name was Muhammad the son of Abdullah, knowing that his mother's name was Aminah, knowing something about his characteristics in terms of his appearance, knowing that he was born in Mecca and eventually performed the hijrah to Medina al-Munawwara. It's also to teach him what is some of the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to teach him the names of some of the Anbiya, the important Anbiya alayhimu salatu wasalam, to teach him that Islam is the final religion, and with Islam all other previous religions were abrogated. Among these lines, these are essential knowledge that the child must receive from the age of 7. But in specific relation to Salah, if the parent does not teach or instruct the child to make Salah from the age of 7, that parent is considered to be a sinner in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He then said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا بَلَغَ عَشْرِ سِنِينَ, that when the child reaches the age of 10, then you need to hit the child, instilling the importance of prayer upon that child. So you instruct him, and if he does not make, you hit him such that he makes. Of course, the hitting that the Sharia speaks of is not an abusive hitting. It's not a hitting that leaves behind, that breaks bones or cause anyone to bleed, or even bruising, for that matter, some of the scholars add. So it's merely a beating that is there to instill within the child the importance of this particular matter. In addition, even that slight moderate beating, that is not a serious beating, that is sort of frowned upon within the world today. Now, Islam is not encouraging physical abuse, and that is something that must be understood. However, that beating that does not reach a point of severity, right? That beating or that hitting can never be something bad, and this is something that we must understand. It is impossible, and again impossible, and again impossible, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the Prophet of Allah, who does not speak out of his own accord, whose words are revelation from Allah, and when he's giving Shari'i guidance, it is coming from Allah. It is as if Allah is saying that the child that reaches the age of 10 should receive a hiding with the parameters that I've mentioned previously. So it's not a intensive beating, but a simple hiding of discipline that does not harm the child in any serious way. There can never ever be something bad. Allah is our creator, and He knows what is best for us. Allah knows where our welfare is. The West, 1,000,000 times over, can never ever determine what the welfare of society is. And if we really ponder and reflect upon matters, you realize that whatever morals and ethics came from the West that contradicted the way of Islam, it only brought about more mischief, it only brought about more injustices, it only brought about more oppression in the world today. Every good that is to be found in the world today emanates from the Book of Allah, emanates from the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's this heating with these parameters as mentioned is something that can never ever be bad within a community or society. In addition to that, the scholars mention that the heating is only something that should be used if you expect to see benefit coming therefrom. If the heating within these parameters is only going to cause the child to distance himself further from his parents, or to develop hatred for his parents, and still not obey, and still not understand the importance of prayer, then in that case, the scholar said one should not hit the child. Now, but in most cases, my own children for that matter, if I was to hit them without being intense, a slight hitting that may be slightly painful but leaves no marks, leaves no bruises, etc., then that is something which will usually impress upon them that what I am conveying to them now is something important. And when the importance of Salah and the Deen is placed within the heart, it remains with them for the rest of their lives. And I've seen homes where children were dealt with and the importance of Salah were engraved within their heart from a young age. I see them today that come what may, nothing at all will ever stop them from performing Salah. But where the azamat, the greatness of Salah was not placed in the heart of a child from a very young age, it's very easy for them to delay Salah, or to make an intention to make qada, or to leave out the Salah altogether. إِذَا بَلَغَ عَشْرَ سِنِينَ, when a child reaches the age of 10, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, then hit them with an understanding that I just explained. I took a lot of time with this hadith to explain certain to explain away certain misunderstandings and misconceptions about hitting within Islam. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. Al-Hadith al-Thani wa Sab'un, Hadith number 72. These are a string of hadith that all speaks about the importance of the neighbors, and we're going to cover them swiftly, inshaAllah ta'ala. And Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala an wa Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma qala قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ما زال جبريل يوصيني بالجار حتى ظننت أنه سيورثه متفق عليه. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar or Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha are the narrators of the hadith, and they said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, ما زال جبريل يوصيني. Jibreel constantly came to me advising me. Jibreel, of course, is the meaning of Jibreel in the what's that now? Al-Lugha Syrianiya. I forget the English equivalent of Syrianiya now. But the meaning of Jibreel is said to be either Abdul Rahman. The meaning of his name Jibreel is either Abdul Rahman or Abdullah, one of the two. Now, so Jibreel alayhi salam, the Archangel Gabriel, the Prophet said he constantly came advising me bil jar, with regards to the neighbor, hatta dhanantu, until I thought annahu sayuwarrithuhu, that he was going to make the neighbor an heir, someone that inherits from me when I leave this world. Now, and that's stressing the importance of the neighbor. One of the discussions that come up over here, is it my Muslim neighbor or does it include non-Muslim neighbors? The scholars were very clear that neighbor here includes Muslim, it includes kafir, it includes abid, it includes fasik. It's your friend, it's your enemy, it's a stranger, it's someone from your town, it's someone that's harming you or not harming you, benefiting you, not benefiting you, whether he's a relative or not. Any neighbor, no matter what quality that neighbor may have, is a neighbor that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about in this hadith. Jibreel constantly advised me regarding the neighbor until I thought he was going to make the neighbor an heir. And we know the Prophet ﷺ once came home when his family slaughtered a lamb, and he asked them that ahdayta lidarin maybe ahdayti, depending on who he was addressing. Ahdayti lijarin al-Yahudi, ahdayti lijarin al-Yahudi, ahdayti lijarin al-Yahudi. He said to, if it was his wife or someone else in his home, but he said to those in his home that, or maybe it was ahdaytum, I forget the exact wording of the hadith, but the meaning is, did you gift from this meat to our Jewish neighbor? Did you gift from this meat to our Jewish neighbor? Did you gift from this meat to our Jewish neighbor? And emphasis on Jewish. And therefore neighbor and the kindness that one should show to the neighbor is not restricted to a Muslim neighbor. Emphasize here in this hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As for the neighbor, what is meant by the neighbor, there are different interpretations of what is meant by a neighbor. Some say that your local masjid, whatever household the adhan reaches, though they are your neighbors. And in today's time with microphones, that would be a very, very large area of people that can actually hear the adhan. Now, another interpretation of what a neighbor is those people that pray Salatul Fajr with you in the masjid. Those are your neighbors. Now, however, Sayyidatuna Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, when she spoke about neighbors, she said that Haqqul Jiwar is 40 daram min kulli janib, 40 homes from each side. And this is how the scholars understood what the neighbor means is 40 houses to my right and 40 to my left, 40 in front of me and 40 behind me. The front and behind within the modern areas that we have today can be somewhat challenging, because if I were to, by way of example, look at my home where I currently stay, behind me is one neighbor, and then there's a road and a highway and a river, and then another set of houses, 40 homes to the front and to the back of my home. Broadens it very, very much. And perhaps we should ask our mashayikh, how can one really understand this in a modern context? Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. Can we imagine 40 houses? Had there been 40 houses straight? Because the idea that is conveyed by 40 houses is a parameter. So you're looking at if a house is to my right is about 15 meters, and then another house, then 15 times 40 would have given me 60 meters to my right and 60 to my left and 60 to the front and 60 to the back. But if we're looking at actual houses, My neighbor may have a very long plot of 1,000 square meters, 1,000 meters or 500 meters, right? And then where does that take my neighbors to? And these are questions, unfortunately, I'm presenting to you, but I don't have the answers to them. Now, could we work on an average of 60 meters in each direction? Wallahu alam. But the letter of the Sayyidatuna Aisha's words are 40 homes. So that diameter of 40 homes to the right, 40 to the left, 40 in front and 40 behind you, it shows you that the neighbor is actually it's rather broad, much more broader than what we may have expected. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. These are the people that we need to show kindness to. These are the people that we need to show care to. And sadly, we live in times where every man is on an island. He moves into his own behind closed gates. He doesn't know what's happening on his right. He doesn't know what's happening on his left. Of course, the neighbor that is mulasiqa should be given extra emphasis. Extra emphasis to your direct neighbors, right? That you are directly bordering, their houses and properties are bordering with yours. So how do you interact with those neighbors? How much kindness do we show? Do we know what's happening in their homes? Imam al-Haddad rahimahullah was known to have let his family go to bed without any food because he wanted to ensure that his neighbors ate before he ate. Rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. What are our interactions with our neighbors? How are we taking the advice of Sayyidina Jibreel that came to the Prophet and advised him so much about neighbors that the Prophet thought that the neighbor was going to become an heir? The next few hadith are all very similar in meaning. We're going quickly through them. Hadith الثالث والسبعون 73 عن أبي ذر رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم يا أبا ذر إذا طبخت مرقة فأكثر ماءها وتعاهد جيرانك رواه مسلم. Sayyidina Abu Dharr narrates from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Ya Abu Dharr, O Abu Dharr, إذا طبخت, when you cook maraqa. Maraqa or maraq is like it's like a soup. It's the best way for me to describe it. Normally, Arabs would often boil their meat. And in the Arab world today, is still a common thing. In fact, in the Western world as well, barath. But maraq may be translated as broth. So if you cook meat or chicken within water, and you added spice to the water, and you added some vegetables sometimes to the water, then once the meat is removed, the water that remains behind, that has the flavor of meat with salt and some onions and whatever other vegetables you threw in it, that broth that remains, it's like a soup, a maraq, which is very tasty. It carries the taste of the meat. So the Prophet said, when you're cooking maraq, meaning when you're actually boiling your meat, then add extra water. Why? So فَأَكْثِرْ مَاءَهَا, add more water, وَتَعَاهَدْ جِيرَانَكَ, and show kindness and gift by gifting your neighbor from the maraq, which is like really beautiful. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that add some water to the pot so that the gravy or the broth may be more, so you can share it with more neighbors. And he's saying share the broth or the maraq, the soup. He's not saying share the meat, because the meat is the essence of what you're actually preparing for your family. He's not saying give that away. He's saying that maraq, you can't drink a whole pot of, share it with your neighbors, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's almost as if the Prophet is showing us that with that excess that you have, that's not going to affect you and your family. With that, you can show kindness to your neighbors, at least. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't show them kindness with the meat that you have, by way of example. Of course, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, add extra water and show kindness to your neighbors. It's all commands. However, the scholars agree that these commandments are not for ujub, but doesn't make the adding of water and sharing with neighbors compulsory, but it is recommended. And again, it speaks about the importance of neighbors. In the next hadith, hadith number 74, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قال والله لا يؤمن والله لا يؤمن والله لا يؤمن قيل من يا رسول الله قال الذي لا يأمن جاره بوائقه متفق عليه. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, by Allah he does not believe, by Allah he does not believe, by Allah he does not believe. قيل من يا رسول الله, who is this person that does not believe, Ya Rasulullah? In some narrations, the Sahaba, they said that khasira wa khab, what great loss has become this person. Who is the one that does not believe? And Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, الذي لا يأمن جاره بوائقه, that person who his neighbor is not safe from his harm. بوائقه. Now, in some narrations, the companions asked, وَمَا الْبَوَائِق? What is بوائق? And the Prophet said, شَرُّ. His neighbors are not safe from his harm. Again, emphasizing the rights of neighbors. Now, neighbors can be harmed in many ways. Right? Neighbors can be harmed in many ways. One of the most common ways in which we affect and harm neighbors these days in the Western world is through noise. Just the other day, it was New Year's Eve, and my mother had to leave home to go and spend the night in my sister's home because there was a new tenant that moved in next door to her. The owner rented out the place to a new tenant, and they were playing music so loud, my mother and father, who are both old, were unable to sleep. That's harming your neighbors. That's harming your neighbors. Now, sometimes we are guilty of the same. We may not have play music loud, but we have mawloods and we have dhikrs, which can be very problematic. We have an annual mawlid at one of my homes, and usually before the Mawlid, we go out to our neighbors and we invite them all, Muslim and non-Muslim, to join the Mawlid. We explain we're having a celebration of the Prophet's birth, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It will start at a certain time, it will end at a certain time, to try and get a buy-in from the neighbors so that we are not disturbing them unduly and unnecessarily. But neighbors are important. And the Prophet ﷺ said, La yu'min, he is not a believer, he is not a believer, he is not a believer. That person whose neighbors are not safe from his harm. The interesting thing about this la yu'min is that the scholars discuss, if you commit a major sin, if you're someone that commit a major sin, can you be called a mu'min or not? And most of them say you cannot be called a mu'min, you're only a Muslim. However, if you commit minor sins, then you are called a mu'min naqisul iman. You are a believer who has deficiencies within his iman. Right, but if you commit a major sin, you're not even called a mu'min, according to many of the ulama. Now, even though some of them said you can be called a mu'min, naqisul iman. I'm going to read this last hadith and we'll conclude with this very quickly. Hadith number 75. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عن أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فلا يؤذي جاره ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليسكت متفق عليه. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is again the narrator of the hadith. He said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever believes in Allah in the last day, فَلَا يُؤْذِي جَارَ, should not harm his neighbor. That is the part of the hadith that emphasized the previous discussions. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ, whoever believes in Allah in the last day should honor his guest. In some narrations, the Prophet said, honor his guest, جَائِزَتَهُ. This command is only for recommendedness and not compulsory. But when a person comes to my home and is looking for shelter, a place to stay, a friend or a family member, then we should have places in our home where we can actually accommodate guests. And the Prophet said, Ja'izatahu is one day. You should go out of your way to honor him for at least one day. And for the remaining 3 days that he has a right to stay within your home, you can feed him from whatever food the family may be eating. And beyond that is all sadaqah. The Prophet also emphasized 1 day and 3 days, not more than that. The biggest problem we have is that we don't welcome people into our homes. Our homes are not open for people, and our homes are not even built in such a way where we can accommodate guests. And these are all things for us to reflect and ponder on. And whoever believes in Allah in the last day, said Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let him speak good or be quiet. Let him speak good or be quiet. And therefore in Islam, silence is not golden, but speaking about Allah and His Rasul, speaking good is golden. And then if you cannot speak about Allah and His Rasul, if you cannot speak good, then it's better for you to remain silent. Silent would thus be silver. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. May Allah grant us tawfiq. May Allah make us good neighbors. May Allah make us good Muslims. May Allah grant us His beautiful sifat and qualities. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Bi'adhin nawaya. Bimana wasana salih. Wa sayyid al-Hajj Umar. Wa ila hadratin Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله.